She came through the front door like someone returning from a dream. I was at the kitchen table sorting through the week's mail. Nothing special, a few bills, some junk, one flyer for window replacements we didn't need. The house was quiet, the sun was down, and I figured Rachel might be tired after her evening out. But she wasn't tired. She was glowing. Her eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed, and she had that slightly unhinged kind of energy that made me look up immediately. "How was it?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Rachel grinned. "Incredible." I raised an eyebrow. "Just a birthday party, right?" She walked past me toward the fridge, like her body couldn't sit still. "It was more than that. I met some people tonight, Lena and Roman. They're different. Like, in a good way. Really free-spirited. They live outside of the usual noise, you know? Free-spirited." I repeated. She turned back around, clutching a bottle of mineral water. "They made me feel like I'd been asleep for the last 10 years. That caught me. I leaned back a little in my chair, unsure how to respond. We'd been married almost 20 years. We weren't wild anymore, sure, but asleep? Rachel kept talking, like she'd been waiting all week to say these words out loud. "I talked with Lena for over an hour. She used to work in finance, can you believe that? Now she teaches breath work and does sound healing out in Sedona. Roman was in tech. Left it all. They run these retreats now. Energy work. Relationship work. And not the fake kind. They're honest." I nodded slowly, trying to stay supportive. "That's nice. Sounds like you had a meaningful conversation." Rachel smiled again, but there was something distant in her eyes, like her mind was still at that party, with them, instead of here in the kitchen with me. "I think I want to see them again," she said. "They invited me to visit their place next weekend. Nothing formal. Just connecting." I shrugged. "Sure, if you want." I didn't think much of it then. She'd gone through phases before: yoga, gluten-free, that 6-week painting class. I figured it would pass. But it didn't pass. Over the next few days, something in her shifted. Not in a loud or obvious way, but like she was slowly changing the channel to a different frequency, and I wasn't on it. She started getting up earlier, meditating in the spare room, playing ambient music with bells and flutes and people whispering in Sanskrit. She bought loose white clothing and talked about energy alignment like it was part of her morning routine. "Roman says the body holds on to shame," she told me one evening. "That it's why so many of us are stuck in lives we didn't actually choose." I was cutting vegetables. "Stuck?" She smiled gently. "Not everyone, Tom. But some people, yeah." I nodded. "And you feel stuck?" She looked at me for a long time, then walked away without answering. That weekend, she went to Lena and Roman's place. She said it was just a few hours, but didn't come home until after midnight. I waited up. When she walked in, she looked tired but happy. Her hair was loose. Her skin flushed. "They have a beautiful place," she said as she kicked off her sandals. "Desert views. Fire pit. No TVs. Just conversations and music." I poured her a glass of water and asked, "Do they have kids?" "No. They say the world has too many kids already. But they're open to community. Chosen family, not forced." I didn't know what to say to that. As she drank, she stared at the wall like she was seeing something I couldn't. "They think I have good energy," she added softly. "Roman said he felt it right away." I stared at my wife of 19 years. The woman who used to beg for us to just have a quiet weekend and watch old movies. Now she was off meditating with desert philosophers and talking about chosen families. That night, in bed, she turned away from me. Her breathing was slow, steady. But mine wasn't. Something in my chest was tight, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, not to another man, but to an idea she hadn't been able to resist. And I didn't know yet how far she was willing to go to chase it. Rachel didn't stop seeing them after that first visit. In fact, it became a regular thing. Twice a week at first, then 3 times. Sometimes for dinner, sometimes for circle work, whatever that meant. She started calling them my people. I don't think I'd ever heard her use that phrase before. She came home from their house looking like she'd just stepped out of a dream, relaxed, radiant, almost weightless. She'd float into the kitchen and tell me about breath work or sound bowls or some emotional breakthrough she'd had while lying on a mat under the stars. The way she talked about them, you'd think they'd cured her of something. And maybe they had, but not in the way she thought. It wasn't just the time she spent with them. It was everything else she stopped doing. She didn't ask how my day went. Didn't sit with me during dinner. We used to go for walks after work, even if just around the block. That stopped too. She was always heading out, always recharging with her new people. At first, I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe she needed this space, connection, whatever helped her find herself again. But then came the first time she didn't come home at all. It was a Saturday night. She'd said she was going to help Lena set up for a sacred dinner. I asked if I could tag along. She laughed. "Tom," she said gently, placing a hand on my chest. "It's not your thing. Trust me." I let her go without pushing. I watched her back out of the driveway in that little silver crossover we bought together. I stood on the porch for a while after the taillights disappeared. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. At 1:38, she texted. "Crashing here. Too much energy work. Love you." No punctuation. Just words. And love you, not I love you. There's a difference. The next morning, she came home wearing a loose sweater that wasn't hers and smelling like Palo Santo and citrus. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want the answers yet. But that was the moment I stopped telling myself it was harmless. The next week, she stopped wearing her wedding ring. She said it was too tight. Said she needed to feel unbound. Unbound. That word echoed through my head as I stood in our bedroom, looking at the small dish on her dresser where the ring now lived. It looked so small, so lonely, resting beside a necklace she hadn't worn in months. The space between us grew like a shadow that kept finding new ways to stretch. I tried to make plans, dinner, a movie, a weekend away, but she always had something with them. "They need me," she said once. I looked at her. I thought I did. She didn't respond. Just gave me that new smile, the one that said she understood something I didn't. It was like she was moving into a world where I couldn't follow. And the more I tried to stay connected, the more I felt like an intruder. One night, she sat across from me at the dinner table, eating a salad she'd made with ingredients I didn't recognize. "I've been thinking," she said, "about my identity. Who I am. Who I've always been." "Okay," I said carefully. "I don't think monogamy fits me anymore." I put my fork down. She looked at me with that calm, unnerving clarity I was starting to dread. "I've never cheated on you," she said, "but I've realized I don't believe in ownership. I want to live with openness. And Roman and Lena, they get that. They've helped me see how much I've been shrinking myself." I stared at her across the table. The woman who once clung to me during thunderstorms, who cried in my arms when her mother passed, who used to reach for my hand in the dark without a word. And now she was telling me that love, to her, wasn't what I thought it was. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," she added. "I just need to live my truth." I nodded slowly. But inside, something cracked. Not from betrayal, that would have been simpler. It cracked from realization. I was already gone from her life. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. It was a Wednesday evening when she said the words out loud. We were standing in the kitchen, both of us holding coffee mugs we hadn't touched. Mine had gone cold. Hers probably had too. She wasn't looking at me, just staring at the tile floor like she was working up the nerve to finish a sentence she'd already rehearsed. "I think you need to understand something," Rachel said. I said nothing. I just waited. The time I spend with them, with Lena and Roman, it's not just about friendship. It's not casual. It's not innocent. There's a closeness there. A different kind of connection. The room was dead quiet. Even the refrigerator stopped humming, like it wanted to listen in. She finally looked up at me. Her face wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was something worse. Peaceful. "If that's something you can't accept," she said softly, "then maybe we need to talk about separation. Or divorce." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice or slam my mug down or walk out the door like some guy in a movie. I just looked at her. "How long?" I asked. She tilted her head. "What do you mean? How long has this been more than friendship?" She paused. "Just long enough for me to know the answer wasn't simple." "I'm not sure when it changed," she said. "But it's changed." I nodded once. "Are you in love with them?" She didn't say yes. But she didn't say no either. "I feel seen," she said. "Really seen. Not for who I was. For who I'm becoming. And I'm not part of that?" I asked. Her eyes softened. "I don't think you want to be." I let that hang in the air. "I need to think," I said. "Take your time," she replied, already turning away. But I didn't need time. I already knew. She'd made her decision quietly, slowly, over the past few months. Now she just needed me to sign off on it, to bless the path she was already walking. I wasn't going to do that. What I was going to do was find out exactly who she'd chosen over me. That night, I sat down at my laptop and started with the basics. Lena and Roman Thatcher. Sedona, Arizona. The first few results were what you'd expect. Wellness retreats. Instagram accounts full of sunsets and handwritten quotes on torn paper. Testimonials from smiling people who all said the same things. They changed my life. I finally felt safe being me. No judgment, just love. But then I found a blog post, dated 3 years ago. It was written by a woman named Chelsea. I didn't recognize the name, but she'd been to one of Lena and Roman's retreats. At first, the tone was glowing, breathwork, energy shifts, deep eye contact under the stars. But halfway through the post, it changed. They made me feel special, needed. They said I was different from everyone else, that I was exactly what their circle had been missing. Then came the requests. Money for a group house they wanted to build. Help managing a joint bank account for community expenses. Emotional labor, she called it, being the go-between whenever Lena and Roman fought. Then silence. Once I started asking questions, they stopped returning calls, blocked my number, moved cities, took the money and left me with nothing but shame and confusion. I read it twice. Then I found another, a man named Eric. Same pattern. Sedona retreat. Emotional bonding. Financial entanglement. Ghosted. The dots connected fast. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a system. They brought people in, made them feel chosen, unlocked, awakened. Then they leaned on them for attention, for money, for loyalty. And when that person ran dry, they moved on. Just like Rachel was being prepped to be moved on from. I sat back in my chair, staring at the glow of the screen. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about control. I wasn't going to stop her from making her own choices, but I'd be damned if I let her walk blindly into a setup that could cost her everything. She might not have believed in the vows we made anymore, but I did. And I wasn't going to let her lose herself without at least knowing the truth. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't slam my laptop shut or walk into the bedroom with some big speech about everything I'd read. There was nothing to say yet. No use throwing truth at someone who isn't ready to see it. I just closed the tabs, cleared my browser, and got to work. The next morning, while she was out meditating in the desert or doing whatever it is they do for realignment, I went into the hall closet and pulled down a box I hadn't touched in years. Tax records, property deeds, our marriage certificate, all the paperwork you ignore when life is running smooth. I took what I needed and locked the rest in my office drawer. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account in my name only and moved my direct deposit. Not everything, just enough to create a boundary, to signal, without saying a word, that the walls of this marriage had changed. Then I called a lawyer. Not one of those scorched earth types with a billboard downtown. A quiet guy named Greg Singer. I'd met him through my old bowling league. Divorced himself. Knew how to move like a shadow. When he picked up, I got straight to the point. My wife's talking about divorce, I said. She's involved with 2 people. Not sure if it's romantic, but it's definitely personal. I want to know my options. He asked a few questions. I gave him the basics. He was calm, measured, told me to take notes, make copies of financials, and not to tip her off just yet. Protect yourself first, he said. Emotion comes later. That stuck with me. I'd spent so long trying to understand Rachel, trying to fix what I didn't even break, that I hadn't done the simplest thing, protect myself. So that's what I did. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved in silence. Organized everything. Scanned documents. Tracked transactions. She didn't notice, or maybe she just didn't care. She was gone more and more. Anyway. Sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight. When I asked where she'd been, she'd say things like we lost track of time, or we did a sunrise ceremony. Once she came home barefoot, carrying her shoes in one hand and a beaded necklace in the other. It's grounding, she said when she saw me staring. She was always glowing now, but it wasn't joy. It was detachment. Like she'd burned off the last of her attachment to this house, this life, this marriage. I kept thinking about what I'd read online. About how Lena and Roman operated. About how they wrapped themselves around people like vines until they drained every drop of usefulness, then slipped off to find a new host. And Rachel, God help her, thought she was in on the plan. One night, I walked into the kitchen and saw her sitting at the table, sketching something in a little leather-bound notebook. She didn't look up when I walked in. What's that? I asked. She smiled faintly. Just vision work. Roman says it's important to put your new life on paper. I opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, leaned against the counter. You put me in there? She didn't answer. Just kept drawing. That was answer enough. That weekend, I made a final pass through the house. Took down photos. Pulled a few old keepsakes from the closet. Packed a single suitcase. Not out of emotion, but efficiency. I wasn't planning to run. But I wasn't planning to be caught unprepared, either. The night before I filed, we sat in the living room on opposite ends of the couch, like strangers in a waiting room. She looked at me suddenly and said, "You've been quiet lately." I shrugged. "So have you." She tilted her head, studying me. "You're not angry?" I shook my head. "No. I think I just finally understand." "Understand what?" "That this isn't my marriage anymore. It's something else. And I'm not part of it." She looked away, jaw tightening. Maybe she thought I'd beg her to stay. Maybe she thought I'd fight for her. But I'd already done that, for months, in silence. And silence didn't change a thing. The next morning, I filed for divorce. Quietly, cleanly. No threats. No fights. Just a signature. Because sometimes the strongest move a man can make isn't to raise his voice. It's to walk away with his head up and his name intact. When I handed her the envelope, I thought she might cry. She didn't. She held it in both hands like it weighed nothing. Her fingers touched the edges carefully, like it was something sacred. Then she opened it, slowly, and read the top line. Her eyes didn't move much. She didn't even blink. "Divorce papers," she said, more to herself than to me. I nodded once. We were standing in the kitchen again, same place where she told me she felt seen by two people I'd never even met. Same room where our life had quietly started falling apart. She set the papers on the counter. Not harshly, just placed them down like they didn't mean much at all. "You really think this is the solution?" she asked, finally looking at me. "I think it's the only honest step left," I said. Rachel crossed her arms and leaned back against the island. She didn't look sad. She looked insulted, like I'd committed some kind of spiritual offense. "I was hoping you'd be open-minded," she said. "At least curious." "Curious about what?" I asked. "The people who pulled you out of your marriage and convinced you monogamy was some kind of cage." She sighed, like she was dealing with someone who couldn't possibly get it. "It's not about monogamy. It's about expansion, about letting go of old ideas. Love doesn't have to look the way we were taught. Love doesn't mean ignoring your partner while someone else rewrites your life for you," I said. She gave me that calm, almost patronizing smile she'd perfected since meeting them. "You're angry because they woke something up in me," she said. "Something you didn't see. Something you didn't even try to see." "No," I replied. "I'm not angry. I'm just not blind anymore." Rachel's expression hardened. "You don't know them," she said. "You've never even met them. You're judging something you don't understand." "I understand enough." She tilted her head, curious. "Like what?" I took a breath. "Like the 3 different people they've deeply connected with in the last 5 years. The ones who helped them build things, retreats, websites, spaces, and then ended up broke, blocked, and blamed." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't interrupt. "I understand that you're not their first missing puzzle piece. And you won't be their last." "That's not true. It's a pattern." She shook her head. "You're just threatened. You always needed control. This scares you because you can't label it." "Rachel," I said quietly, "they're not the ones who scare me. The person you're becoming, the way you've stopped questioning anything, that scares me." She looked down at the divorce papers. "This feels like a punishment," she said. "It's not," I replied. "It's a release. For both of us." She looked up again, her voice quieter now. "I thought maybe you'd want to understand. Maybe you'd come with me sometime. Just see what it's about." I gave a small, tired laugh. "You're halfway out the door with them, and you're still pretending this is some spiritual field trip I got left out of." "I was never hiding it from you," she insisted. "No," I agreed. "You just didn't care if I saw it." She stood there for a moment, biting the inside of her cheek. "I need time to process this," she said finally, tapping the envelope. "You've had months," I replied. "I'm the one who needed time. You just made your choice earlier." She picked up the papers and walked out of the kitchen. No yelling, no pleading, no tears. Just footsteps. And a silence that said everything. That weekend, she moved into a small studio apartment near the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but close enough to Lena and Roman's circle. She posted a photo of the place online. White walls, a potted plant in the corner, her yoga mat rolled up near a window with morning light pouring through. The caption said, "New beginnings. Light. Freedom. Gratitude." Friends from her world commented with emojis and hearts. One even wrote, "Welcome to your real life." She didn't tag me. Of course not. But she didn't block me either. Maybe she wanted me to see it. Maybe she wanted me to hurt. But all I felt was clarity. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was falling behind. I felt like I'd stepped off a train before it crashed into something neither of us saw coming. The first few weeks after Rachel moved out were quiet. Not empty, just quiet. I kept going to work, ate the same breakfast, drove the same route, paid the same bills. It was life, uninterrupted, but without the noise she used to bring with her. The sighs, the tension, the unexplained silences. It was like the air had been cleared. Meanwhile, Rachel's life had never looked more alive. Or at least, that's how it came across online. Photos flooded her feed. Bonfires in the desert, group meditations under string lights, blurry selfies with Lena and Roman, all three of them glowing like they'd just solved the meaning of life. There were hashtags now too. Hashtag sacred union. Hashtag chosen family. Hashtag energy work. Hashtag liberation. One post stuck with me. A picture of her barefoot on a red rock ledge, arms spread wide to the sunrise. The caption read, "No longer playing small to keep others comfortable. This is me, fully expressed, finally free." She looked happy, but I'd been around long enough to know, sometimes happiness is just well-lit denial. I didn't reach out. I didn't comment. I just watched. Friends asked how I was doing. I always gave the same answer. I'm fine. She's figuring herself out. But deep down, I knew something she didn't. I'd read the stories, the blog posts, the warnings from others who had fallen into Lena and Roman's little orbit. It was always the same structure. Make you feel chosen, draw you in, talk about energy and transformation, then start asking for things. At first, it was time. Help with organizing retreats, help planning workshops, help hosting guests. Then it was money, shared space, shared resources, shared investments, all under the name of community. I waited, patient, quiet, and sure enough, it started showing up in small ways. Rachel posted about a new co-housing project, a collective vision. She was pouring her heart and finances into something sacred. The language was flowery, but I'd worked in operations management for 20 years. I knew what it meant when someone said, intentionally pooling abundance. It meant someone was writing checks, and I'd bet it wasn't Lena or Roman. I started hearing things through mutual friends, not gossip, just pieces. She sold her car, right? I think she left her job. She's living with them now, I think, or near them. Then one night, out of curiosity or instinct, I pulled up the public property records in Sedona. Sure enough, a home recently signed over to a private LLC called Triad Rising Collective. Listed members, Lena Thatcher, Roman Thatcher, and Rachel Reynolds. I didn't even feel surprised. Rachel had always been generous, emotionally, financially, spiritually. That was part of what I loved about her. But she'd never been reckless. Not until now. From what I could gather, she'd cashed out most of her divorce settlement and invested it into the collective. The house, the retreat materials, the website, the business license. It was all in her name, and theirs. And like always, it was framed as a gift, as faith. But faith, I've learned, can be manipulated just as easily as fear. A few days later, she posted something that made my stomach turn. Letting go of individual wealth to step into shared abundance. Ownership is an illusion. Safety is community. Underneath, someone commented, "You're glowing, Rach. So proud of you." Another wrote, "Real love doesn't need contracts. Just truth." And all I could think was, truth doesn't need branding. I didn't intervene. Didn't warn her again. I'd already done that. But I kept watching. Because the smile on her face, in every photo, every post, was starting to look tired. The glow was still there. But it was dimmer, stretched thinner, like a flame running out of oxygen. She stopped posting as often. When she did, the captions were shorter, vague. No more sunrise gratitude. No more hashtags. Just photos of food, or a blurry candle on a table, or her hand resting on a worn journal. And then, slowly, the others disappeared. Roman stopped showing up in pictures. Lena posted less. The Triad Rising website went down for maintenance. And the silence started to grow louder than all the mantras she used to chant. The message came on a Tuesday. Rachel hadn't posted in over a week, a long time for her, considering how constant the photos and affirmations used to be. Then, out of nowhere, a simple quote graphic appeared on her story. Sometimes the people who helped you grow aren't meant to stay. Honor the chapter. Turn the page. At first, I didn't think much of it. But 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It rang once, then stopped. A minute later, a text came through. "Tom, it's me. Do you have a minute to talk? It was Rachel. I stared at the screen for a while. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I already knew why she was reaching out. I waited an hour before replying. Sure. Call when you're ready. She called that evening. Her voice was lower than I remembered. Slower. Like someone who'd been walking uphill for miles and finally sat down. I'm not asking for anything, she said. I know. She paused. I guess I wanted to hear a voice that doesn't come with conditions. Another pause. They asked me to move out, she said finally. I didn't say anything. They said my energy had shifted, she went on. That I was carrying too much resistance. That I was creating friction in the group. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. They told me, she added, that I should take some time away. To realign. Alone. I waited. And then I found out they're traveling to Costa Rica next month. With someone new. Some guy named Eli. He's joining the circle. They didn't even tell me directly. I found out through a post. I closed my eyes. Sounds like a familiar pattern, I said. I know, she whispered. You warned me. She didn't cry. I think that part had already passed. I sold my car, she said. I put money into the house. Into their project. I'm not on the lease anymore. They transferred the LLC into a new structure. I don't even know if I could prove I was ever part of it. That caught me off guard. You're not on anything? No. I thought we were building something that didn't need contracts. Something higher than that. I didn't say what I was thinking. That's how people get robbed. By convincing themselves they're above needing protection. I have maybe $300 in my account, she added. And I don't think I can afford rent in Sedona anymore. I didn't ask what she was going to do next. She wasn't ready for that part of the conversation. They told me I was the missing piece, she said softly. That they'd never felt this kind of energy before. That I completed something in them. And now they don't answer my calls. There it was. The part no one warns you about in these awakenings. That when the honeymoon's over, there's no cleanup crew. Just silence. They used me, she said. And I let them. Her voice cracked, but she held it steady. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't say you made your bed. That wasn't what she needed, and it wasn't what I needed either. She already knew the truth. Now she had to live with it. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For everything. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Me too. We didn't say much after that. A few days later, I heard from a mutual friend that she'd moved into a rented room on the edge of town. One of those converted garages with a hot plate and a curtain for a door. She took a job at a smoothie shop in town. The kind of place where she used to roll her eyes at the prices. I drove past it once. Not on purpose, I was heading to the hardware store. She was standing behind the counter, tying her apron. She didn't see me. She looked tired. Not physically. Spiritually. Like someone who'd carried too much light for too long and had nothing left to glow with. The call came on a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting on the porch, watching the breeze move through the trees like it had nowhere else to be. The air was warm. Quiet. Peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. Rachel. I hadn't heard her voice in over a month. Not since she told me everything had fallen apart. I answered without saying a word. She didn't speak right away either. Then, finally, I didn't know who else to call. Her voice was thin. Raw. No spiritual lingo. No calm smiles. Just exhaustion. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. I needed to hear someone who knew me before all this. I leaned back in the chair. I'm here. She let out a breath. I thought I was building something real, she said. I thought I was finally stepping into who I was meant to be. And now, she trailed off. Now I'm sitting in a rented room with no furniture. No car. No savings. Just a pile of journals full of things that don't make sense anymore. I didn't speak. She needed to let it out. I kept trying to tell myself I'd made a brave choice. That I was freeing myself from something. But it doesn't feel like freedom now. It just feels like falling. Her voice broke then, a soft sound, like something inside her had finally collapsed. They replaced me like I was nothing. Told me to rest, to take space, to find my own alignment. But really, they just didn't want to deal with me anymore. I closed my eyes. They used my words, she said. My heart. My trust. And I let them, because I didn't want to believe that people who talked about light could be so dark underneath. She paused. I'm so ashamed. Still, I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only honest thing left. I ruined everything, she said. I destroyed the one person who ever actually loved me. That's when I finally spoke. No, Rachel. You destroyed the illusion that I wouldn't walk away. She went quiet. I loved you, I said. Not the idea of you. Not the image you tried to become. Just you. The person who used to get excited about thunderstorms and cried at dog movies and hated cilantro. She let out a weak laugh. Still hate cilantro. I know, I said. More silence. I miss you, she whispered. I nodded to myself. I miss who you were. Before all the searching. I didn't know I'd lose everything. You didn't lose everything, I said. You just lost what wasn't built to last. She sniffed. I don't even know who I am anymore. That's a good place to start. She was quiet again. Then, in a small voice, are you happy? The question landed harder than I expected. I thought about it for a long moment. About the quiet mornings. The space to think. The absence of chaos. I'm becoming someone I actually like, I said. That feels close enough for now. She exhaled, not sad, not jealous. Just accepting. I hope someday I can feel that, she said. You will. If you stop chasing people who only see you when you're useful. We stayed on the line a little longer. Not talking. Just breathing. Eventually, she said, thank you. For picking up. I always will, I said. But not forever. She understood. We said goodbye. No promises. No open doors. Just two people finally honest with each other, even if it was too late to matter. After I hung up, I sat there a long while. Not grieving. Not celebrating. Just grounded. Rachel had gone looking for herself in the eyes of people who only reflected what they wanted her to be. She found something. But it wasn't truth. It was emptiness dressed in light. And sometimes, the only way to understand what real love looks like is to watch someone walk away from it and straight into the fire. Rachel faded from my life the way some storms do, not with a bang, but with long, cold rain that finally stops without anyone noticing. After that last call, I didn't hear from her again. Not directly. No messages. No check-ins. No, maybe we can talk. But every so often, I'd get pieces. A friend from town saw her waiting at the bus stop, holding a canvas grocery bag and wearing a jacket too thin for December. Another said she'd started working part-time at a yoga studio that had more candles than clients. She wasn't teaching. She was cleaning, wiping mats, refilling tea, folding towels. The woman who once planned marketing campaigns for national brands was now sweeping incense ash out of corners and thanking people who barely saw her. But the thing that stuck with me most? She never once blamed me. I kept expecting some sort of backlash. A message laced with resentment. A subtle dig on social media. Something to remind me that I was the one who didn't understand. It never came. Maybe because she finally understood, too. She had believed so deeply in something that never cared about her. She wasn't tricked, not fully. She handed over her trust willingly. Her money. Her time. Her body. Her future. She let herself be rewritten by people who only loved the version of her that served their story. And when that version ran out of value, when she started asking questions, showing stress, looking less radiant in pictures, they let her go without hesitation. That was always the deal. She just didn't see the fine print. I didn't follow her story after that. She'd chosen silence, and I respected it. But I saw traces now and then. Her face on a flyer for a community workshop. A quiet post about healing through stillness. A shared quote from a meditation coach that had maybe 12 likes. There was no more talk of sacred geometry. No firelit retreats. No glowing praise from the inner circle. Just a woman trying to pick herself up in small, unremarkable ways. And I respected that too. Because that kind of recovery, the private kind, the quiet kind, is harder than any ceremony. As for me, life moved on. But not quickly. And not all at once. There were days I still caught myself looking at the empty seat across from me at dinner. Still heard her laugh in my head when I watched something dumb on TV. Still reached for her in bed without meaning to. But the grief became softer. Not something that crushed me, just something that sat beside me once in a while. I didn't start dating right away. Honestly, I didn't feel the need. I wasn't looking to replace anything. I just wanted to find my own center again. Not the kind with crystals and chanting, just real, quiet balance. I started hiking again. Got back into woodworking, something I dropped after we got married because the sawdust annoyed her. Built a few shelves. Refinished a table. Brought something old back to life with my own hands. It felt good. Whole. A few months later, I ran into someone at the hardware store. Woman named Diane. We'd gone to high school together, hadn't seen her in 25 years. We started talking by the paint samples. By the end of the aisle, we'd made plans for lunch. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't fireworks. It was comfortable. And after everything I'd been through, comfortable felt like a gift. We started seeing each other once a week. Nothing intense. Just walks, dinners, easy conversation. She never asked about Rachel. Never poked at the wound. She just let me be. She said once, "You seem like a man who's come through something." I nodded. "I have." And that was it. No need to explain. No need to unpack the fire. She saw the man standing in front of her, not the one I used to be. And that was enough. Rachel and I never spoke again. Not after that call. And maybe that's the way it had to be. Some goodbyes don't come with closure. Just distance. And peace. The last time I saw her was almost by accident, across a parking lot downtown. She was walking slowly, holding a paper bag, eyes on the ground. She didn't see me, but I saw her. And I felt nothing bitter. Nothing sharp. Just gratitude. That I had made it out. And that I'd never let anyone tell me again what love was supposed to look like.